So what I thought before the break, we'll have maybe everybody who was on a work group come and sit up front, or if you were both in two people, you can choose maybe one, and we'll have a panel discussion before the break. So Bob, why don't you take a seat, and maybe Kendrick and Kathleen and Ali. Yeah. So the idea here is to give you a chance to really ask the hard questions. Please, anything that comes to your mind that you feel was unclear, raise it. Also, think about what we might be missing. What is it that we're not thinking about, that we should be thinking about? What is that on our radar, and should be a topic in the work group, and in the work groups. And I also think I think the chance here with a panel is also to think about what kinds of connections are there between different work groups? What kinds of topics are there that might benefit from cross-fertilization, so to speak, okay? To continue with the myopic Missouri farmer analogy. So what is it, where could the work groups help each other? So let me just, as an example, mention something that came up in Bob's session, right? So you, thanks to Brian and Emily, you've increased the likes on Facebook, 200%. That's amazing, right? To 600 people now engaged there. That's, I mean, first of all, congratulations, and tell me how you did it. And second of all, how can we get those patients onto the patient portal, right? How can we continue that momentum to really connect to Neurobank in the patient portal? I mean, I think there are many such items and threads where we could just maybe harness what's already been done to make progress, right? Maybe Brian, you want to speak briefly to that?
It certainly has been a struggle to publicize the patient portal, and I think it's important, and we're going to continue on this effort to tell people that the information that they have and that they're willing to share is really important and it's impactful. As far as where we go next with that, we're just going to keep on keeping on that front. But I think that as more people get involved, and especially since we have a number of other advocacy organizations have also pushed it, namely the Myelin Project, have also pushed this and recognized the importance of getting patient data into the portal. I think that we'll see over time the benefits of that. Plus, we also have some improvements in mind for the patient portal, and I think that'll also drive engagement.
Yeah, maybe on that note, can we hear maybe a little bit from other patient advocates? What works on the patient portal, what doesn't? And introduce yourself so everybody knows who you are.
Well, I was just thinking as far as the social media and the reach, and I just wanted to say that PEP video that we made for newborn screening, I just posted something I was just sharing with Janice. Over the weekend, we had an opportunity to get some Fox coverage in our local affiliate, and I have over 10,000 for the reach this morning. So momentum is really building for all of us, and all of us that were there, it was an amazing day. So we're getting there.
How did that happen? What was it? Was it the Fox news outlet?
Yes, it's called, the reporter is, she's lovely. She has a mommy minute every Monday. And she followed us when we were legislating in 2013. So she did the follow-up. And she used my pictures from the day, from the 27th, and just the process. So it's it's very interesting for people to learn.
So that's great. I again, coming back to what we said before, I mean, the portal is there for you to use, right? So if there is something you want to ask from the patient community, that's a quick one-page survey, we should be posting that. We should be using that, and I think that might help with engagement. Other comments?
I have one comment on the. Use this one.
Can you just keep your mic? I'll keep mine. Okay. I don't think that's.
Is this working?
Yeah.
Okay. One of the things that's become very clear of the biomarker accumulation study. One of the things that's become clear with the biomarker or the accumulation of patient samples and the accumulation of genetic and clinical data or biomarker data from the patients is that if patients aren't going to the patient portal and to Neurobank and entering that information, then there's no correlation between what actual biological data is available and the clinical outcomes. And so the full circle nature of that has become sort of clear to worker 3 in the biomarker plan. So Neurobank is an absolute, and the patient portal is an absolute key component of making that work.
Yeah, so the other thread that was occurring to me is, as I saw that map that Bob showed and how you are now trying to engage in newborn screening across the country and probably looking for lead physicians in every state to help bring newborn screening about. And I know, Janice, you've been traveling all over the U.S. trying to find interested physicians. Maybe there's a connection here to what Ali brought up about what are the next sites that we should be looking at who are seeing ALD patients. So both from support for the newborn screening and services to patients, as well as for our Neurobank entry and trial preparation, right? So I think there is another obvious connection. Look, Ali's slouching, so I'll give him the microphone.
I just nodded. Oh.
A question about biomarkers. Sorry. I was wondering if there is an effort made to collect longitudinal samples to see what correlates with disease progression, and maybe also samples from diseases that have similar symptoms, similar manifestation of disease, but different mechanism, because a lot of biomarkers which are being discovered nowadays are promiscuous and or related to the consequence. It would be interesting to identify those related to the mechanism of the disease from this comparison.
Yes, so what we have from other diseases that are more common, that share some of those mechanisms of action, is that they are better studied, simply because the cohort of information we have is larger. And so once the ALD-AMN collection of biological information is more available, then that comparison will be one of the first and most exciting things to, I think, launch into. But you're absolutely right. As for the longitudinal data, we have not addressed that, simply because this was sort of step one in the process of accumulating those samples.
Yeah, Ali, do you want to talk about what you think should happen longitudinally with additional data?
I'm not sure I can. Yeah, maybe have somebody else comment on that. Yeah. So yeah.
So I can say something. I'm Kathy Zakowski. Sorry, I sat up here because you said Kathleen, so I decided I should. But I do have a comment about longitudinal data. So I work a lot with multiple sclerosis, and they have they have a database very similar to Neurobank for MS, and it's patient reported and some physician reported. And what they use are so the way they deal with their longitudinal data is to have statisticians kind of look through it and be able to mine the data to look for similarities. But I think what you're really asking is how do we relate this to the mechanism? And I think it is possible to look at some of the self-reported data and at least find patterns that are consistent, and then go back to the science and say, do these patterns make sense with this particular mechanism?
But, I was also wondering if there is a targeted collection of clinical samples made to study longitudinal changes.
Yes, there is. So there is targeted collection of samples historically at Kennedy Krieger, and maybe Alex wants to state briefly what we would like to do at ALD Connect in terms of a biorepository. Can you make any comments, Alex?
We have a session after lunch.
Okay, so why don't we discuss it in more detail?
To talk about the imaging longitude.
Yeah, so I mean, when we talk about biomarkers in ALD, at least in the cerebral variant, I think there's extensive data already on imaging, and there's several papers that have been published along that line. There's still data that can be, further analyzed for more targeted questions. There's a lot of data existing already. In fact, about what was it, 1999, there was a network established where Florian was the coordinator of that network, and then I was the coordinator of that network, utilizing MRI across sites, trying to connect sites and collect data. We did that with the University of Minnesota and Kennedy Krieger. I think there were about 150 patients where data was collected longitudinally, several sessions. And the value of that data was that a lot of those patients were transplanted. And a lot of that data ended up in the paper, Lancet Neurology, published by Asif a few years ago. What was it, 3 years ago perhaps, that actually summarized that. So there is definitely a lot of imaging data existing. There's a lot of plasma samples, thousands of plasma samples already existing, that Anne, has immediate access to. She can get you that tomorrow, pending IRB approval. But I think the issue here that we are actually dealing with is getting, to some extent, there is the biorepository and the quality of data in terms of quality of sample that needs to be collected. But one of the issues that needs to be addressed, perhaps even more, is yes, there is data there and there is samples there, but can we actually access it? And it comes back to who is going to give you consent to access that sample? What are you going to do with that sample? There is intellectual property issues, there's legal issues, there's HIPAA issues, and those are really the tough parts. And those are one of the reasons why, not everybody in this room is already using some of the samples that have been collected over the decades. And so I think that's really a big issue, and it becomes more and more of an issue the more things evolve now, especially with the stem cell technology now and the lawsuits that follow with the hairy lax, cell line. Hopkins, for instance, is being extremely restrictive right now on what we can do with patient fibroblasts. And, if a patient has passed away, forget about it. There isn't really much I can do with that, because there's no way I can get consent from that patient, and I'm going to generate stem cells, and basically that's a big challenge, because sometimes we don't know if those patients are still alive or not. I would say the majority of the time we don't actually know if they're alive. So there's a lot of host of issues that make it a little challenging to look at retrospectively collected data.
Okay, so what Ali forgot to mention is that one of the reasons it took us so long to get approval from the IRBs of our 5 institutions is we tried to do something very revolutionary, which is usually scientific protocols, as you know, or most of you know, is defining we will collect or enroll X number of patients from N number of sites, and we will collect this, and that. What we decided to do is completely different. So we turned everything around. We're saying we'll enroll as many patients as we can from as many sites as we can, and we will collect whatever we want. So from this perspective, it took us a while to get approved. And in terms of consent, it was also quite revolutionary, because usually they're saying, okay, so, and that's the reason we cannot take data from KKI, because it says, I consent that my data will be used at KKI for ALD research, period. We cannot take it, we cannot publish this data because we're not KKI. So what we did for this natural history in ALD study protocol is we said there are two things we're saying patients consenting to. A, I acknowledge that GUID, Global Unique Identifier, will be used, basically acknowledging that indeed my data may be connected even if I participate in multiple studies. And B, my data anonymized could be used anywhere for any purpose of medical research. So not ALD research, not Parkinson's disease research, but any kind of medical research. I think these two items are quite powerful, and this is why now we're using it even in ALS, which is much bigger disease and much better funded disease. We're using this type of protocol now in ALS natural history. And to expand this even further, so we can, it allows us to bring any number of centers, sites, institutions from all over the world by saying, look guys, just adopt this protocol, give it to your ethics board or IRB, and start doing this, including sample collection. Stefan, you wanted to say something?
Well, about sample collection, maybe that's one of the advantages of a small country and a centralized research center. Most of the Dutch patients, they visit the MC, and from over about 120 patients at this moment, we collect samples every year. This is blood spots, blood cells, plasma, subset of patients, cerebrospinal fluid every year. MRIs are taken, clinical evaluations are being done, all kinds of tests, questionnaires. So that started last year. For the women with ALD, we started this 5 years ago, and we published the data, and I think next year we will do a 5-year follow-up on that cohort. So I think, yeah, we are trying to
How about sharing?
Yeah, obviously, if you have a good idea. Yeah, we have to. I mean, we are happy to share, obviously, but the amount of material that we have is limited. So it has to be obviously a very good project, because it's very easy to share your limited amount of biological material with everybody. But since all these patients participate in these studies, we really need to make sure that we get something out of it. So not money-wise, but data-wise.
If I may now pose my, not question, but a query about one very important aspect of ALD for which you have not talked about either biomarkers or longitudinal study, and that is the adrenal function. And we do not know when the adrenal dysfunction starts in children. It's not till they come in a crisis or with severe abnormalities that we begin to recognize them. And I think as part of the, now that you have newborn screening, you can start talking about when does the adrenal dysfunction start, when should we start treating them? Would early treatment perhaps ameliorate some of the severe outcomes we see later in life? And this is true even of women, because even though we published a paper saying women do not have adrenal abnormalities, actually Jim Powers showed that the women had these lipid leaflets in their adrenal glands, and there are some women who take cortisone supplementation because they feel, quotes, fatigue. And they've been checked and they have low levels and they get treated and feel better. So I think that is one aspect that has to be included in your early screening and longitudinal studies.
Thanks, Haku. I mean, I think just highlights also that that we want all people with ALD carrying a gene involved and understand their priorities. And I think often the women and mothers are get short shrift and they often come to clinic and they come with their kids and then they pay all attention to their children, but then we don't get to talk about them. So I think that's really important that we also, moving forward, pay larger emphasis there. So maybe this is a good time to pause, or is there another one? Oh, Katie. Say who you are.
I'm Katie. I'm with Dr. Eichler here at NPH. I'm just wondering what percentage of the patients are being seen in one of your centers? Because I would think that all these biomarkers are going to be very hard to collect unless you have patients going to a center that's somehow affiliated with this.
Right. So maybe this comes back to our geographic distribution of centers. That is certainly something that 2016 we want to tackle. We have a center on the West Coast and Utah, Minnesota, Kennedy Krieger, Mass General. We still need a lot of centers in the South and Southwest. I think there's we want to start a larger outreach and collaborate with other centers in Europe as well. But I think, yes, that's certainly a key question because travel of patients can be quite impeding. And I think hopefully with the newborn screening drive in other states across the country, we could maybe, do this hand in hand, that we, as you are looking towards physicians and educating them, maybe bringing them into our physician community as well, so that on the one hand they understand that now this is becoming a necessity as the newborn screening is arising in their state, but they also have the resources and the community of other physicians to help them.
Yeah, can I just make a quick comment on that? I think it's totally the point. We need to write on the newborn screening to exactly do this because, for instance, now we have the state of New York newborn screening, yet we are still sort of challenged to identify a site, and it would be preferably more than one site in the state of New York because it's a big state that can be actually a representative for this kind of thing that we want to do. And those are the babies that are being seen right now. And the next state is going to be California, 30 million people, high birth rate. And we have Stanford, which is 800 miles away from the Southern California, where most people live. And so we really, I think, need to spread the word that there is such thing. And it will be on the patient side we can help. We can reach out to physicians. They may be busy and this, but I know from my own practice that the biggest driver for a doctor to do something is their patients telling him. And I think if you identify individuals that you think would be able to do what we would like to do here, I think that would be key for us to get that advice from the patient side as well.
Hi, Jen Farmer from the Friedrich's Ataxia Research Alliance. Our organization deals with a lot of the issues that you've been talking about, the Facebook, social media, getting people into our patient registry. We've got a very similar incidence of about 5,000 individuals in the U.S. with the disease. So there's a lot of overlap. One thing, question I have, I think you've got a really great opportunity here with newborn screening. I'm totally jealous. We don't have that. I don't think we're going to have it for a little while. I hope we have it sooner, but we're 10 years into our natural history study and our patient registry. And the individuals that we're lacking are the individuals who are at that pre-symptomatic or earliest stage of disease. And so with this newborn screening effort, getting people into your patient portals, to me, seems like it should be the #1 priority. And if that's working through the states to get information to them so that as patients are diagnosed, they're given a piece of paper that tells them, go on to this patient portal. Or tells their physicians to tell them to get onto the patient portal, seems like a really important opportunity. We did that with genetic testing when it became available for FA. We went to the genetic testing labs and provided them with information that they could include with test reports. And for a long time, it worked really well. So, there's lots of creative ways I think that you can do that, but those individuals, especially as clinical trials come about, are going to be some of the most important individuals. Most of the trials right now in Friedreich's ataxia, the companies want the youngest patients enrolling in those trials, and those are the hardest for me to identify.
I'm Asif Parker. My comment is about spreading to other centers and expanding the program. We are thinking about a lot of neurology and neurological center of excellence for ALD. We should also think about a transplant and transplant physicians. I know Troy is here, but there are a lot of centers where neurology may not be strong, but they're strong transplant centers. Same was as Saku was saying about endocrinologists should be involved in that too, because as with newborn screening, we're bringing a lot of new patients in. We need to bring other physicians also in this organization so that they can have voice and they can share our concerns too.
Hi, Karen from ALD Life. I was just thinking about the patient portal in that there is a way for parents to talk about their children and there's a way for adults, so those over 18. My son is 19. He's incapable of filling out any information. So really it's my opinion on what he finds difficult, which could be very different to a man who can tell you. So does there need to be another kind of form so that actually you know? So when I filled it in, you had no idea that it was me filling it in and not him. Does that make any sense?
Well, it is a challenge. When we designed the portal, so we came from, user per patient to this family accounts, right? So where you're saying here's the family with a single username, but then there may be carrier, right, child, non-affected adult, and so on. So, and for us, if you could advise us what to do, but for us it was kind of maybe not obvious, but the easiest pathway, saying that if it's a child, so someone from the adult family, right? So representative will answer these questions by saying, hey, I'm answering on behalf of my child. We do hope that you're asking your child rather than expressing your own feelings, but how can we guarantee? Again, we're open for suggestions. So maybe we can have, a kiddie portal as well with some kind of, easier, so someone is disagreeing with me, so I'm all open for suggestions.
Oh,
You were nodding.
I better watch my head movements. Did I misunderstand? Did you say your son is 19? So it's not really a child, it's a proxy for an adult, I think she was saying.
Right. But
there is the same problem that if you're asking for a child, then the child is up to 18. So if you've got a 17-year-old who's asymptomatic or has been through a transplant, their views, you're quite right, might be completely different to the parent's view. And there's always the chance that the parent will just go in. Sorry. will go on to the portal and give their views as opposed to the child's view. So perhaps it needs to be clear whether it's the child's view or the adult's view. And I just think with the older symptomatic boys, that actually a man with AMN or even early onset cerebral ALD, he can tell you exactly how he feels. I'm only second guessing how my son feels. So you're going to get, it's not going to be good data because of the sort of, whether it's your opinion or someone actually living with it.
Can I add to that too? So I come from a very different background than many of the people here. So I'm from rehabilitation specifically. And I'm wondering if we're kind of missing an opportunity to target that population. So because I know many of the patients will see physical therapists and occupational therapists. The therapists don't know what to do in many cases either. So teaching them about the portal and having them help their patients fill it out or tell the families about the portal might be a completely novel way to access this population and get people involved with the website.
So I don't want all these things to get lost. I think this should continue into work group 4 and become sort of really a sustained topic. But I think that is sort of the forum where you really want to build into it and then pilot it within the patient portal. I think that would be very much worth it. Probably now is where we should have a break, and we'll continue around 11 with the industry participants. Okay, thanks everyone.